Hello and welcome to Parking Lot Conversations. I'm Jerry Tucker and I'm here with...
Can you see me?
I can see you, man.
My computer just went out. No joke.
Oh, there you are. It's Tim Jeske, everybody.
Is it back?
Somewhere.
Yes.
There
I'm
he is.
back. My name is Tim, and it's good to see you today.
Hi, Tim. I'm Elka.
I'm Matthew, the coolish guy.
So, guys, you guys probably see our little special guest. We'll get to her in just a minute, but I'm like a Facebook fiend, and I see all kinds of crazy stuff, and I share that with you just like you guys share it back with me. And I saw a post a while ago that says, "Hey, haven't heard from that Have Kids It'll Be Fun class lately. Where are all those people at now?" Because they're all at home going crazy, homeschooling their kids, living all day long with all of these kids in the house. They don't know what to do. They're like, please God, open that school back up quick.
Quarantine life, man. I'm telling you. It has definitely been interesting. But
go ahead, Elka. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say we're super excited because we do have our special guest with us today, Stephanie Classon. She's a friend of mine and a counselor here in Waco. And so, Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is awesome. So you are officially our first guest. Congratulations. We need to have a plaque or something for you.
Well, wait a minute. Now, Ryan was a guest on our show.
We do not count Ryan.
Yeah,
no,
Ryan was a guest on our show.
He does not get counted. So Ryan, my bonus boy, is 21. He was a quote unquote guest, but he's Ryan.
He wasn't official though. Because
he wasn't official.
No, you can't make Ryan official with anything.
He's family, exactly.
Okay.
But Stephanie, tell us a little bit about what you do here in Waco and who you are.
Okay. So here in Waco, I'm a counselor. I am a marriage and family therapist. I've had my own practice for 10 years. Before that in Waco, I worked at the DePaul Center, which is a part of Providence Hospital, the psychiatric hospital. And I also worked for a psychologist doing a lot of work with testing of juveniles when they were in juvenile detention center and working with families involved with the CPS system.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful. Well, we are so excited to have you. And one of the biggest things I think that all of us have had brought to us from our youth kids is questions about how to handle the stress and the worry that they're experiencing right now during this whole coronavirus pandemic. And they really are dealing with something that really has never happened before in history. And it's kind of a learning game for all of us. And so it's sort of thrown them for a curve. A lot of these kiddos have been used to having a fairly simple life with not too much drama. And then from one minute to the next, everything changed and kind of got taken away from them. So a lot of them have been asking really great questions. I want to thank you guys for sending in your questions because they were excellent. And we want to kind of take some time today to just address those concerns that you guys have because they're legitimate. They're things that even us as adults are dealing with. And so we want to take a little bit of time and kind of talk about that with Stephanie. So the very first question that we had sent into us, and I think it's probably one that we're all dealing with right now, regardless of age, it's how do we handle that fear that we have, that inherent fear when we hear these things about the coronavirus? And of course, continue to keep hearing new news about what's going on in the world around us. It seems like there's always something new coming around, and the statistics can be kind of scary.
For sure. Well, let's first start talking about the fear piece.
Okay.
I mean, remember that fear is a normal emotion. So step one, I would say with families is let's talk about it. I love having a check-in time. It can be during, morning breakfast. Now that we're eating a lot of meals together as a family, any meal time or devotional time, just check in with each other. How are you doing with your fear? How afraid are you? What are you afraid of? So talking about it versus internalizing it, that really helps. The second thing I'd like to share is fear is contagious. Okay. So what that means is our kids are going to catch from us how we're responding to this. So we've got to model great behavior. Now it's not going to be perfect. I'm scared too. I think first week one into this, I was scared about some crisis unfolding at the grocery store, and I gave my oldest son nightmares because of it. So we're not going to be perfect. Okay.
Right, sure.
But we've got to model how are we handling this fear. We're talking about it. We are taking breaks from it. we are exercising and doing self-care. And the more we can model those behaviors, then our kids are going to learn from us how to handle it correctly as well. And the third thing about that question that I'd like to say is it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do the positive and negative at the same time. So something our pastor challenged us to do is when fear starts creeping in, we have a family blessing book. And so we're writing blessings, writing things maybe we saw or heard on the news, like a company like HEB that gave everybody a pay raise. If we can write that blessing down, it shifts our mind from focusing of the fear of the grocery store to something to be thankful for that the grocery store is doing. So
Yeah,
that
that's
family
awesome.
blessing book has really helped us this week.
Oh, I love that idea. That's a great way to also just start maybe using that blessing book is also a way to maybe even do a family prayer together. So,
Oh yeah.
What a great way to kick that off too. That's a great idea. I think a lot of our kids are also dealing with this sudden exposure to more news than what they're used to. I think teenagers do watch the news. A lot of them actually talk about it more than I do. But at the same time, those that haven't really done that a whole lot in their lifetime are now starting to watch it just because they're wanting to keep up with what's going on, and it's become more interesting to them. But at the same time, that's set in more fear because the news is sometimes a little bit extravagant in the way they report things. And I think sometimes that maybe kind of just hits them a little harder than what they were expecting. Because I know with my own kids, when they're listening to these reports, that tends to be when we get obviously the most thoughts. It makes you a little bit more nervous and on edge when you're hearing those things firsthand. One of the other big questions that we got from our kids was, what do we do when we're constantly being just bombarded with all of the negative news?
That's a great question. Some ideas that I've been reading about these last couple of weeks. One is really pay attention to how much news you're watching. I'll kind of go through that with different age groups. So really, if kids are younger than 6, as much as possible, let's try to avoid them watching the news.
Okay.
About 7 years old is when the experts are saying that they're mature enough to be able to start processing some of that. So for kids younger than 6, that's really as much, limiting that exposure as much as you can. After about 7 years old, watching some news is great, but let's be careful, where are we getting this information? A lot of times your breaking news or your social media news is a lot of rumors or something that just
Agreed.
draws in a lot of attention, but it may not be truth. So really make sure, go ahead.
Right. One thing of that, for the 4 of us, we grew up at a point in time when the news came on at one time in the early evening, and then you had the evening news. For Jerry, there's 3 stations, that was it. And so you were very limited in how you could get your news. And now, even early 80s with cable TV, 24-hour news. And now it's not just 24-hour news, but it's news on like a gazillion different platforms. And every platform's fighting to get viewership, to get it, to get people to actually pay attention to them. And it's kind of watered down the news. We don't know what breaking news is like what we did growing up.
Hey guys, hold on a second. I have breaking news coming in. Earpiece. This just in. Official taco of the Texas Rangers. Back to you.
Oh, man. So, I was muted a while ago. I had 4 stations. And like Elvis, I was ahead of the times. Elvis in the Jungle Room, he had 3 TVs in the Jungle Room, which was unheard of at the time, so he could watch all 3 networks at the same time. I was kind of like that. I had more than 1 TV, so could I watch all the networks? So there, Matt.
All right. Right. But I'm just saying, like, how often, it's a thing called clickbait.
Yeah.
That we now know. And that's
right.
all over the place. And you can't make heads or tails between what's clickbait or what's actual news until it's way too late. And sometimes the actual news comes in, it's an article a friend sent me and Elka that could have taken an easy 15, 20 minutes to read. And to get to the actual news, you've got to be able to sit down and read for 15 or 20 minutes. We don't do that anymore as a society. It's get the stock ticker news down at the bottom of the screen, or what the talking head is saying. And we've been trained to receive that as truth, as this is solid, verified truth. And it's like you were saying, Stephanie, sometimes it's not. It's a rumor, or it's just garbage, not even a rumor.
That's right. I know one thing we do is when we're talking about some of these news stories, I'll challenge my older kids, well, let's do a little research on this, so we can all discover together, is this an opinion, or can we base this up with facts? Again, in this weird world we're in right now, we have a little bit more time to do that stuff. That probably in normal day-to-day life, we wouldn't have time to research it. But, now turn it into a current event at home. Let's research what we're learning and talk about it as a family to kind of filter through the truth and the rumors.
Yeah, I love that. Teaching our kids how to do that is so important, just as an everyday skill, right? Because it's not just the news where we hear those things. So yeah, I really like that a lot.
Well, Matt, to expound a little bit on what Matt said, a lot of times you see this, a lot of people just read the headline or what's there, and then they take that as the whole story instead of reading the actual story. And the headline is like what he said, clickbait. They want you to click on it and read it, but sometimes what the headline reads is not actually what the story is saying, and so we take
it's just
the headline,
most shocking piece.
the most shocking part of it.
Exactly.
They don't want you to click on it to read it. They want you to click so that the ads pop up on the next page. No, and that's a huge thing, that money is constantly fueling so many things that we don't realize it. You cannot go online and easily find a recipe where you can get to the ingredients and the cooking instructions all in one spot on your device anymore, because of all the ads, because that's how this individual is making money, because I didn't go out and buy the cookbook. I went the cheap route. But we get all this clutter, all this extra noise, even just surrounding a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. And now they want to get that ad revenue in, and so they're going to do the clickbait.
So that's a really good question, actually. So when we are bombarded by all that noise, that extra stuff, how do we kind of like clear that out?
Sure. I think it's really important, again, to model for our kids, and then also for our teens, that we have space in our life, that we have screens off. I did read some research that talks about, fortunately, teens now, because they've been bombarded their whole life with propaganda, with those commercials, they have almost a better filter than what people in our age group have, because they've had to develop that basically from birth, with people on their phones. You look at something and all of a sudden that advertisement hit your email. They've done that their whole life. So really they have some skills there that help with this, but developing boundaries too, where we close the laptop, put our phones down, turn TVs off, turn radios off. We need some of that time, especially right now during coronavirus.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great suggestion. And turning those devices off is helpful, because then you can have those conversations, right? And I know when I'm having a conversation with my kids and they're still on their device, I get a lot of, so it's kind of nice to have a face-to-face conversation with them, actually.
And one challenge that I can put out, don't just turn off the device, unplug the Wi-Fi router out of the wall.
I thought you were going to say hit it with a hammer.
Because we need, but I'm serious. Like what we'll do, and I've seen this happen so many times, as mom and dad will tell the kids to get off their devices, but yet we're still on ours.
Oh, I've done that to me. Yeah,
same thing. Oh, well, I need to have access to this because of this and that and the other, and all of a sudden we're on Instagram. Right? And so I'm saying disable the access to the internet, which of course cell phones, that messes things up just a little bit, but disable access to the internet and really make it an issue. Take the phones and put them in a box. Like, don't just have
phone jail
off.
Phone jail.
Everybody, phone jail. Have everybody do that. And maybe, the first handful of times that you're doing this, have everybody turn off the device and start a new activity together as a family.
Yeah.
Great idea.
That's a great idea.
I like that too, because kids don't know, I'm thinking back, I get annoyed if my boys are, let's say, playing Madden too much, but then maybe I'm on my phone doing some work or reading the Bible, but they'll ask me, well, you're on your phone too. They don't know the difference,
right.
So everybody modeling that together is great.
So I have a question. One of the things that I know my kids have been struggling with from my youth group is that they are wanting to have conversations with their parents about the fact that they're afraid, but they don't always know how to bring that up in a way that either isn't going to give them a long lecture, which is not what they want, or they're really upset because parents are listening to the news constantly. They want to have them turn it off, but they don't really know how to address that.
Okay. You know, if this is teen initiated, I think as long as you're using respectful communication, it's okay to ask your parents. You know, parents make mistakes. We all make mistakes. So there's a difference between, you know, being disrespectful or respectfully coming up to your parents and saying, you know what, I'm really scared by what you're watching on the news. Can we turn it off for a while? Can we talk for a while? That's okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of times, maybe going back to what you said earlier, explain what's going on from your point of view. And I think if you can give them some reassurance from your point of view, you know, yes, this is a scary thing. And yes, I'm trying to get as much information as possible so that I know how to handle this as well. And just, you know, show them that you're vulnerable and a little bit afraid about it as well, but also explain to them what you're seeing and what's going on. Reassure their fears.
Right. I mean, Amelia is 7. I have a 7-year-old, Stephanie, and she's smart. She knows what's going on, right? School's not in. I mean, everybody knows your routine has been disrupted. And so we've had to have that conversation with her. Like, you know, she's like the virus, Corona, you know, and explain to her that it's going to be okay, because they're looking at us as adults. I think for a little bit of, I think even the teenagers are looking at us for a little bit of security. Just like babies do from the very beginning, right? And their parents, you know, they're looking for that security in this changing environment, that it's going to be okay. And we're going to get through this together. So having those conversations, Elka, I think is very important.
Right, because so far all they've seen is when all the grown-ups get upset and scared about the coronavirus, we go buy toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right. But from a kid's perspective, I mean, these are smart kids.
Yeah, that's true.
The thing before. How in the world is toilet paper going to help me from a coronavirus?
That's right.
And so, yeah, again, the effective modeling, the putting it into practice. And I like the practice part, not just because I said it, but we're going to screw up. Like, and this is kind of going to what Jerry and Tim are saying. Like, we are going to stumble too. There's going to be times where it's going to hit us harder. It's okay to let your kids see that.
Right. It's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to apologize. And something else that I was reading about, which I agree with, is we're going to see, as parents, we may see some regression in our kids right now. They may go back to something they haven't done for a couple of years, because this brings so much fear in us, in them. And so, yes, if we can talk them through it, maybe they're going to sit in our laps again where they haven't done that for a while. That's okay. Embrace those opportunities. I think that's really helpful.
I've seen regression in Jerry and Elka and Tim just in the last couple of weeks.
That's pretty typical, though.
I've regressed so far, like so long ago. There's no more room to go down. So
funny. Yeah.
Hey, we have not had a conversation about bidets in this current podcast, so we're doing good.
There you go.
I'm past that.
Oh man,
Guys are gross.
Oh man.
Well, there's a reason why my background looks like it does.
Oh.
Thank you for that, Matt.
We don't need to know.
You're welcome.
No, bad visual.
We have a guest today.
We're supposed to tone it down a little, guys. We're supposed to put our best foot forward, and here you are.
So best foot forward. It almost sounds like we're coming to an end to most of our pertinent thoughts to this. Stephanie, do you have any other thoughts that we interrupted or that you want to share before we wrapped up this video?
I just want to encourage everybody, we are going to get through this. Kids love to hear family stories. So just be thinking of things either in history or your own family history that y'all have gone through. Maybe a family death, a job loss, an illness. Talk about those stories at home. Remind your kids, we got through this. There is the other side. And I think that's something that they need to hear right now.
Yes.
I agree. Yeah, that's a great thought. One thing that I want to say is that I think with my own family, just being able to go to God in prayer and pray together I think that kind of helps calm fears for us. I think it's also been something where we're a little bit more intentional about it right now. And we are home. So there's that time there that maybe isn't always present. So, taking that time to just sit and pray with the kids and go to God with the fears, that helps too.
Amen.
I agree. And this is a great time too to get kids involved in devotionals, which is, I've loved seeing how my boys pray during this time. They're taking it really seriously. They're begging for God to bring a vaccine, and it's just neat to watch.
Yeah, that's a really cool thing as parents to be able to see that. And what a great time to spend in prayer with our kids and modeling, like you said before, all of that. I think when they see us going to God, then it's easier for them to do that as well. And it definitely helps disperse the fear a little bit. So that's a great thing. Final thoughts? Anybody else?
Well,
You guys wrapped it up well.
Call this a vocational hazard, but if our kids don't have a safe place at home to experience this fear, don't have a safe place at home to practice doing the prayer, practice doing the devotion, how can we expect them to be able to do it outside of the home?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And I think that's a huge, like, as far as not like kind of an outreach witnessing type thing. But when we get to go back out eventually, fears are still going to come up. The opportunity to share scripture is still going to come up. What better time than now than to give our kids space to practice that? So.
Great. Yeah. Awesome.
So, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully we'll have Stephanie join us again. If not, we'll find somebody else that Elka knows that she can pay.
Thanks for having me.
Stephanie's like, wait, I'm getting paid for this?
The check's in the mail, Stephanie.
But hopefully it's been a blessing for you. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
There you go.
Thanks so much for having me. I've loved it.
Oh, we appreciate it, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
And we honestly do hope to have you again sometime in the near future.
Well, sure. Anytime. Anytime.
All right, guys. Thank y'all.